Yes, and thank you for tuning in. This is James Moore, and you are listening to solar-powered, people-powered KRUU-FM, broadcasting from the Cultural District here in Fairfield, Iowa, now in our second decade of broadcasting. Joining me in the studio, 4th Ward City Councilman Michael Halley. And Michael, how you doing?
Good, glad to be here.
Good to see you, and we bring it to you after each City Council session, God willing, and the creek don't dry. That would be the lunchtime following on Tuesday, 12:30, also rebroadcast Thursday evening dinner time, 6:30 p.m., and following Monday morning, 6:30 a.m. Nice to have Jason Strong in the house with the Fairfield Media Center. And what do you got on the dockets?
All right. It was a relatively short meeting, so I'll try to abbreviate it even further than it actually was. It's a review of our regular City Council meeting from July 10th, 2017. No public appearances again, so I'm really missing those.
Oh, that's a record. That's 4, I think, in a row.
Yeah, 3 at least.
3, okay.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see if someone shows up next time with something to say. Moved on to our action items. The first was a resolution, considering a resolution of support and local match for Faircast application to the Iowa Economic Development Authority.
Okay.
I believe it's the actual, not association. So some people who read the news would know that, read the local paper would know that Fairfield Castings was purchased by Faircast, and that's a bunch of local investors, and that's the business over kind of across the street from the Law Center. And they're restructuring a bit, and I don't know the details of this resolution because we weren't ready, or we were ready, but FEDA, Fairfield Economic Development Association, wasn't ready to move forward last night. So we're going to have a special council meeting Friday the 17th. Is that the correct date?
Is this where the layoffs were? Is that a different situation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, Friday the 4th. No, Monday the 17th. Yes.
Monday the 17th.
Monday the 17th at noon at City Hall.
Okay.
Where we'll address this. But yes, that's where the layoffs occurred. And so more on that next time, because I don't have any further information.
Well, it's an interesting and a pretty big story, really, for Fairfield. That was a couple hundred, or how many?
100, yeah.
That's a lot.
Yep. So Faircast apparently is interested in hiring back a number of the people, but
I see.
It's still somewhat up in the air. Next, we passed an approved a tax abatement application. It was for 916 North 9th, and that's the latest Habitat for Humanity home. So because it's new construction, you can have an abatement on the property tax for 3 years, up to a percentage of the total.
I just saw a press release. The new lieutenant governor is going to be working on some Habitat for Humanity project somewhere.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's a great program. Next, we approved giving the surplus service weapon to a retiring police officer, Jay Zeiser. He's retiring at the end of this month after over 30 years on the force. He's the only current Fairfield Police Department employee who's been there since the 80s.
Wow.
And as is custom, they donate his weapon. So it's like a parting gift. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, the department is looking to do a changeover anyway, an upgrade. So it was going to be a surplus weapon regardless, but so we approved. That's a parting gift. Here's your gun. Be careful with it. So next were a couple of city projects.
Do we know if he has a carry permit? That's the only thing.
I'm sure he better.
Okay.
Once he becomes just a citizen. Installing a manhole over on Lincoln Avenue. So that's the little road that is more or less east of the hospital. And there's a new development out there, and that was part of this agreement to help that development by installing wastewater. So the manhole will be installed by a local contractor, Drish Construction. They were the low bidder. Also awarded a contract for Adams Avenue sanitary sewer project. So Adams Avenue, the portion just west of, see if I can get this right, portion west of Maple. So a portion of Adams will be torn up. The street will be completely torn up, coming up. I believe it's starting later in July. Third week in July, I believe it starts. So that portion of road will be closed, and the sewer line will be replaced, and then a portion of the street will be completely reconstructed. If you've driven on Adams in that area, you can tell it really needs it. More on that as it unfolds. We awarded a contract for purchase of a trailer-mounted vacuum hydro excavator unit. This
Easy for you to say.
This is for the Public Works Department. Essentially, it's a kind of a mini version of the vac truck. Now, the vac truck is the big white vehicle that has the powerful vacuum, and it can be used to unclog the wastewater or stormwater if there's major clogs. Mm-hmm. But it's a little bit too powerful for some of these smaller jobs. So the street department wanted to purchase this. They had it in their budget, and they say that it'll allow them to do similar work on smaller, because it's instead of a whole vehicle, it's something you pull behind, and then you can vacuum out potholes before you fill them, which makes the fill stick better and the pothole or the patch last longer. So it's a good piece of equipment to have, and they took the low bid on that one. We set a public hearing for the Adams Avenue reconstruction project. I mentioned that portion of street being reconstructed. So the public hearing will be at the July 24th council meeting, 7:00 p.m. Sorry, I'm rattling these off because I know we've got a time frame. I got a time frame. You got a time frame. So we'll just keep knocking it off. This one, I'm going to slow down a little. We passed a resolution to put a ballot measure on for this November's election. And it has to do with local option sales tax, because local option sales tax was approved by voters. It's been approved by voters repeatedly in terms of when it initially was adopted for building a law center. And then after that, to change the allocation. I think we've changed the allocation 3 times since it was originally adopted. And this would be a vote to extend it for another 10 years after it's set to expire July 1st, 2019. Mm-hmm. But because there are no election cycle, we don't have another election before then, it needs to be decided now, or else the city ends up paying over $10,000. I think it's between $10,000 and $20,000 to put in a ballot item.
Oh, I got you.
When it's not part of an election cycle. It's very expensive. Not very expensive, but it's expensive. So better to put it on the ballot now, even though it's a little bit ahead of when it needs to be decided. So at this point, here's the language. It's basically yes or no to local option sales tax extending from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th. Hang on a second.
By the way, you're listening to City Business with Michael Halley. I'm James Moore. This is KRUU-FM, KRUU-FM.com on the World Wide Web machine, 100.1 in our local FM area. And we're talking all about city haps at City Hall.
This is interesting. I thought it was another 10-year extension, and it looks like, I'm going to get verification on this because we have some time. Mm-hmm. It looks like it's just saying to keep it going after July 1st, 2019. Now, maybe it doesn't need to say 10 years because that's state law, and that's just understood that it would have to be voted on again. But okay. I thought the language would have been more clear on that 10 years, and that's what I was told is it's a 10-year time frame. But the language that it appears will be on the public measure does not mention that time frame. It's just basically requesting or yes or no on an extension.
Maybe we can clarify that next time.
Yeah, I want to clarify that because that's important. So here's the breakdown. Revenues from sales and services tax imposed shall be allocated as follows. 25% for property tax relief. That's a general term. Essentially, you can think of it as a tax that replaces the need for property tax. So any revenue stream other than property tax, like local option sales tax, can be considered property tax relief, not in the way that that money is then somehow granted back towards property tax, but it's funds that come in that balance or negate the need to raise property tax. That makes sense. It's an alternate funding source from property tax. So therefore it's called property tax relief. But the relief part, people might think, hey, my property taxes are going to go down. And that's not a claim that anyone can make with this this revenue stream it brings, I think 25% is about $200,000, which is great, but it's drop in the bucket for the millions of dollars that the city budget includes. Currently, the city has been using that to build our cash reserves, which was one of our financial goals. And so we'll continue to do that until it's built to a certain percentage of our operating budget. I think it's about $1.2 million.
Which helps with the rating, right?
Helps with the rating. It helps with a number of things, actually. Having cash on hand for small projects means we don't have to borrow, so we can avoid paying interest. So having cash on hand it's just a good idea. And so we want to continue to build that up. And it was a recommendation, not of necessarily the bond agency, but the state auditor.
That's it.
They really like to see a certain percentage of your total budget as cash on hand, and really just think of the things that you never want to happen, like a really bad storm or a tornado. And if people's properties are destroyed, then they're not going to pay property tax on a dwelling that doesn't exist. So there your revenue streams disrupted. So you'd better have some rainy day funds or some tornado day funds on hand. So it's just a good idea. So 25% property tax relief, 50% for street and street reconstruction projects. So that we've been doing for a number of years. So that's going to remain the same. And then in a sense, we're restoring the 25% for any lawful purpose, including community betterment. That had been split in two when voters in a 2-to-1 vote, 66% versus 34, voted yes for allocating 12.5% or half that 25% of community betterment for purchasing the Civic Center building. The Civic Center building will be completely paid off in 2020. So if there's the 6 months between July 1st, 2019 and when maybe it's paid off, or whatever many months that is, the city has an option of taking some of our unobligated reserve and paying that loan off and then using lost funds to replenish that reserve. So it's still staying true to using local option sales tax to purchase that building, which was what the voters said. But moving forward, we didn't want that included in the language, because I remember trying to explain it to people last time we did this, and the legal language said 12.5%, and it was almost two identical paragraphs, but one said for this purpose and one said for anything but this purpose. And it just confused people. So we thought, 25% for any lawful purpose, including community betterment. If the convention center wants to request funds for maintenance, or if the city decides we want to help maintain that building like we do the Carnegie Library building the city owns, we can still do that under this, or they can apply for a grant like all the other nonprofits do. That still allows for that, but it doesn't specify it. And moving forward, it didn't seem to be a need to specify that any longer. So that was the recommendation from Ways and Means, and the rest of the council said.
What is the total money then that the city put into that? Is that like?
Oh, I can get that figure. I can't remember.
Well, it must be almost $1 million if it's a $200,000 fund and it's 10 years.
It was 10 years of 12.5% of a range. I know that local option sales tax.
It's not always 200,000.
No, because local option sales tax has gone up over time. But let's say it started around 800,000. Let's do some round numbers here.
It must be somewhere in that range, though.
Yeah, I'm going to get it. I know I can find that, because I would like to remember as well. All right, so obviously my calculator and I are not getting.
Well, that's all right. That I didn't. It's just a.
All right, so yeah, about $1 million. It looks like it was about 100,000 a year for 10 years. So again, it was a voter-supported initiative.
I was just going to say, or the city could make it to the finals of Wimbledon and lose and make $1.4 million. But anyway, that's another subject. $2.8 million for winning Wimbledon.
Really?
Yeah, it's $45,000 just for making it as one of the 128 players in there. But
should have taken up tennis.
Yeah,
what I was thinking.
So easy to win Wimbledon, really.
All right. So again, we'll have many months between now. Well, a few months between now and election day to get into
talk about it. People want to see what it means. And,
answer questions.
And did you say that it comes down to a yes or no about simply extending
or not.
it.
Yeah.
And then this idea of taking the 12 and a half, the 25, is that part of this, or is that a different point?
Yeah, it would be yes or no to extend it with this allocation.
Okay.
So it's a yes or no. It's a pass or fail. If it was a no, then it would expire at the end of June or beginning of July in 2019, and there would be no local option sales tax any longer. Alrighty, resolution. We accepted an easement acquisition agreement out at Libertyville Road. So the city has been wanting to extend the sewer line on Libertyville, and the properties out there are not within city limits. And some of the people want to keep it that way, and they're wheeling and dealing to get the best deal they could on these easements, some temporary and some permanent. Temporary is while it's being constructed and the sewer lines are being put in, and then permanent is they can't build a structure on the ground directly above where the sewer line is. So it's always done this way, that they're paid something for that inconvenience or disruption. So another one has signed on, and it's only left, I think, 2, maybe 3 properties that have not yet come to an agreement with the city. So once it's all squared away, that project can start. But in terms of public health, it's in some ways it is superior for people to be on a sanitary sewer line instead of septics. Septic systems can fail sometimes, and at the same time, I understand if they live outside of city limits and they like it that way, then they don't like the fact that the city council voted that when those septic systems they have eventually need to be replaced, at that point they actually are legally bound to tie into our wastewater system. And at the point that tie into our wastewater system, then their property becomes within the city limits. So it's not, we're not annexing them now against their will, but we're setting conditions that will lead to annexation in the future. So it's a bit of a gray area. The city has never, from my understanding in its history, or as long as anyone remembered, involuntarily annex property. It's not something the city has done, is to take it. We've always tried to work with property owners, and I could say this is definitely a gray area. We're not forcing them, but we're setting conditions that they will eventually have to be annexed, because their septic systems can't last forever.
I think it's pretty close to forcing. It's not forcing.
It's not forcing them right now, but it's this condition is that they will be. Now, some of that is state law, that if you're within a certain distance of a sanitary sewer line, you have to connect. But it's the council who's deciding to put the sewer line along their property. So I'm not going to mince words and pretend that we're not creating this situation that will lead to annexation, because that would be disingenuous, and we are. And so, yeah, it's the closest thing to involuntary annexation that I think the city's done, as far as the people I've talked to.
And some of the other folks in that area do want to do that. So
some people want to, and
so
are going to do
mix.
it. Yep. There's going to be a bunch of islands. There's going to be some properties that are hooking up immediately and becoming part of the city, and several that aren't. And then eventually they'll all be part of it. And it's other people, I mean, you can play devil's advocate and say, when you build right at the edge of city limits, then maybe not be surprised that eventually the city's property would expand. Yeah. But again, I see it both ways.
I know where I grew up was the west side of Madison, and it would be a mile or 2 drive to the church that was out where we were. And I go back now, there's not even there's not a break from there all the way to the high school that I used to be way out in the country.
Yeah, and I was just looking at a map of Cedar Rapids, Marion, and Hiawatha, and those 3 cities all share borders. There's no gap any longer.
That was Madison, Wisconsin, by the way. But
yep. All right, real quick, mayor's report. He appointed a wayfinding commission. Essentially, it's the same group of people who have been meeting about wayfinding, enhancing wayfinding in Fairfield. Now, Councilwoman Martha Rasmussen, and myself were the council members. Apparently, Councilman Darren Hamilton is interested. So now we've essentially formed an ad hoc council committee, because as soon as there are 3, you get into open meeting laws and all those requirements. So we'll be looking at the recommendations that the wayfinding group made recently, and essentially taking taking the recommendations and turning some into real projects and recommendations for the city. Sad news. City Administrator Mike Harmon has tendered his resignation due to family issues, wanting to move back to South Dakota. Mm-hmm. It's where his wife is from. It's where her family is. So he will be leaving us, I think, August 18th. And then they'll be moving to Spearfish, South Dakota, where he will be serving as city administrator for Spearfish, a town about the same size as Fairfield.
Well, that means the search is going to be on again, huh?
Exactly. So we'll start... the council, I don't know if we made a motion. Perhaps we did to hire the same firm. It's kind of a one-man show. Who we used last time, this guy named Patrick Kennedy. Is that right? Yeah. I'll have to think about that for a sec. Pat. He's actually a former city administrator here in Iowa, and now he's kind of has his own search firm. And we really liked working with him. He was the one who...
Well, it worked out well.
Got Mike, and so we'll start that conversation, and maybe at that Monday meeting on the 17th, might have some agreement to
hopefully
move
he'll
on.
miss us.
Oh yeah, he will. I know this is hard for him.
Yeah, but family is family, and
yep. All right, last thing, and I wish I had more time to talk about it. Maybe that's what I was trying to rush is. The council did talk about the fireworks ordinance and had a little bit of a review of... A
lot of, I don't know if it's Facebook or what, but certainly a lot of comments this time about... And I was startled a few times unexpectedly, but I mean, I'm twitchy anyway, and I live 16 feet from where it used to honk 4 times. I'm not quite so jumpy, but there are people that were worried about their pets. And so what's the outcome?
So the general consensus, the feedback that council and the mayor received was that it was the length of time. People weren't, some people probably would prefer they were banned outright, but just the length of time, that window from the Friday preceding through the Sunday following, but no later than July 8th window, people just thought, it's a one-day event. Why are we going crazy with fireworks for so long? And when I voted to support that time frame, I imagined families launching them, and you might hear occasional pop, and it might be here or there, but I was not prepared for the amount of fireworks that were being launched, and which shows that there are a large number of people who really enjoyed
blowing things up.
Yeah, launching fireworks. So
launching fireworks, not necessarily blowing things up.
At the same time, you're like, okay, well, a lot of people enjoy it. They're happy that they can. But you have to also take into the fact that what the city essentially has done is made a legal window where you can be a public nuisance. You can do something that otherwise wouldn't be.
Was there a limit on their hours, right?
Yeah, it was 9 a.m. till 10 p.m.
Okay. I think there were a few after 10 p.m.
Yeah, there were several. And then till 11 on the 4th.
Was anybody hurt?
No one was hurt. No fires.
No, okay,
so it was a safe event, but obnoxious. And so
were there fireworks at the Jefferson County Fairgrounds, by the way?
Not the fairgrounds, but they were out the waterworks.
No, but I was looking out my window.
Oh, did they have one too? Sometimes the fair, they'll do it on the last night. They did.
Okay. They did. Okay, yeah. That's what I saw.
But that's somewhat removed because organizations launching fireworks wasn't really what this ordinance was about. It was about individuals.
No, I understand. Yeah. I just was curious because I thought either somebody went over there and had some pretty
so they
impressive...
usually do the last night. They usually have a little fireworks show. But I thought you meant the cities, which was out there for a brief time, is now back at Waterworks. And that was a really great show on the 4th. That was one of our best. So the nutshell conclusion was it looked like the council was open to reviewing this again in the spring before next July 4th. Taking more time, hearing from more people.
Did you hear any positives on it?
I only heard the fireworks, which tells me that was the only heard. You know what I mean? It's like I didn't hear somebody calling saying, yes, thank you for this. But
that's it. It seems to me it's the kind of thing that people would more not like than they go, hey, this is cool. Yeah. Because if you want to... They're expensive or whatever fun they are. If you had it in a tighter window, you could still shoot them off.
Yeah.
So as much as you wanted, but
during that, if it was a shorter window, that it could definitely. But I'm just trying to imagine if you took all the fireworks that were launched over that 9-day window and you shorted it to a 2 or 3, it would be a lot in that 2 or 3 day period. But maybe people would just not buy as many, and
or no, even
window.
if they did the same, the fact that it was in that window, that it was more during that time, is, I think, it's just more startling when you're hearing them further afield. I think, because it would be like, it's late June. You're not thinking,
that's it. Like, what is this going on? And I think that's what happened. And just not in defense of the council or anyone, but Police Chief Thomas made an excellent point. State legislators used to set the effective date on new laws to July 1st, so halfway through the year, beginning of a fiscal year. But recently, they've been making them effective as soon as the governor signs them, which forces cities to scramble.
Yeah.
Because it's not legal for cities to have code that defies state code.
Gotcha.
So we, City Council, we didn't skip any steps. We didn't skip any of the readings, which we're allowed to do in certain circumstances, not skip, but combine. So we did it over a 3-meeting period, but I got feedback from the public that they weren't aware of it. So again, you and I do this to try to make people aware.
Well, no, and the Ledger, and you guys are filming live, and it's that kind of thing. I'm not trying to get on people's case, and whenever there's something that is a little bit different, they say, why? People often say, why weren't we told? It's like, well, what do you do to tell people? It's in the paper, it's on the radio.
And I do turn it back. I say, that's part of being an engaged citizen, is you've got to pay attention, and you have to do a little bit of, you got to be a little active.
Engaged citizen, are you proposing? Why? I do declare. Anyway, that'll do it for today.
And on that note.
And what a note it is. Thank you, Jason Strong and Jimmy Week. We'll go more and more forth and all that kind of stuff. Bang, ouch, that's my hand. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Michael. Michael Halley.
You're welcome.
4th Ward City Council person. City Biz.